Well, welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. No matter what time of the day or night or year it is now in 2025, it is a great time to be a Gamecock. I am Tony, here with Adam. We were raised as gentlemen, so you know it is ladies first. Talking South Carolina women's basketball, and we got a lot to get to. A little bit delayed, just after the holiday. We had a couple things with schedules and just delays, of course, on the podcast. We have one game in already with the SEC slate where they made sure to cage the Missouri Tigers with a nice 31-point win, Adam.
Yes, 31 points. A nice clean game, I'd say.
Nice clean game. Well, we love that. And of course, nice start to the SEC slate. But as we get further and make deeper dives into this particular show, we are just going to be looking ahead into the schedule, have a little bit of a prediction just overall what the SEC schedule will be and where we think South Carolina will set up going into the SEC tournament. Now, this is going to be a grueling schedule because this is still, in my opinion, from what I've seen so far across the basketball spectrum, especially on the women's side, it's going to be the best conference in women's basketball. A lot of debate right now who's the best football conference, that's for sure, at least in this day and age, the way that bowl season shook out on the football side of things. But there's just so much power, so much talent on the women's basketball side of things, and the SEC should be a force to be reckoned with. I anticipate a good handful of teams by the time the selection show gets, of course, all laid into place on the women's side. But I do want to break down this game quick as we, of course, yes, we just saw a win over Missouri. Good offensive output, found their way over 80 points again, which is great, really nice to see. And just going over some of these stats really quick with you, Adam, and everyone listening, as we have settled in now to SEC play. Yes, 83 points on the board, and there was a pretty good spread around amount of points between not just the starters, but really the bench here. And this is what I love to see, the bench starting to gel already as we're getting into SEC play. Actually, the bench outscored the starters, so fun little fact for you there as we go into this. And the leading scorer, Miss Fulwiley, she put in 17 points in 20 minutes, 7 for 11. So that's great for her. Also, Ashland Watkins had a double-double, 11 points for her. Actually 11 rebounds for her and 11 points. So where that double-double is coming from. And also with 11 points was Pow Pow. Of course, she was a starter, but everyone else failed to reach the 10-point mark, which is fine because I just love how much this team can spread around the ball, making sure they total up assists pretty good. And that's just something I want to keep seeing from this team. I want to keep seeing them grow on that. I want to make sure that they're having that good ball movement, good speed, good scoring. The shot selection is proper, because that's how you're going to, and I'm going to still say this until you're blue in the face, you overcome some of these bigger SEC opponents who might even, for a couple games, might outmatch you or be a little bit more of a size mismatch down the road. But still, good way to start conference play.
I agree, and I couldn't be more excited about what we saw out of Fulwiley this past game. I mean, we heard early in the season, especially after that UCLA game, maybe there's some rocky waters there. With where she was at that point with the team. So for her to be the leading scorer in the first game of SEC play,
yes,
has to really just kind of dispel any kind of worries that we had. She's looking as we expected, and the team also playing as expected.
Well, you know it's going to be a good day when you're seeing your bench players. And of course, just where players are by the end of the season, I don't know if they might shake up the bench a little bit, depending on what Dawn's looking at. But she's doing just fine right now off the bench, which is okay. It doesn't matter whether you're on the bench or whether you're starter. As long as you're having that production and you're still able to get out there and put your best foot forward and you're starting to make your shots, you're starting to gel, feel confident, and just really feel that energy and connection, which, I'm sure a lot of these women are going to be doing with, fans when you get that great energy with more of these bigger and nationally televised games. And it's going to be great. And this was just a great way to start it. So from start to finish, it was a pretty settled-in affair. And, 31-point victory over the Missouri Tigers. And this is what we're now left with, a very, very difficult schedule here, Adam, as we keep our eyes down the road. And it's not even just to the point of the upcoming slate of ranked matchups we have. We're going to get to that in just a second. But I also, of course, want to make sure, I'm giving credit where credit is due. And even some of these unranked teams right now looking pretty good, especially our next game coming up. And that is tomorrow. We're recording this podcast on Saturday, January 4th. This game is at 2 o'clock on the SEC network. And they're going on the road to Mississippi State. This is still a time of the year. I'm not sure if they have students back. People might be doing different things, might be busy. I'm sure you got South Carolina coming to town. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of people in that basketball arena. I haven't been paying attention enough, at least to games at Mississippi State. Fans are allowed to bring the cowbells into basketball games, and I feel like I've watched. Yeah, I've watched a lot of SEC ball, but I cannot remember off the top of my head if they bring the cowbells into basketball games or if that's just a football thing.
I'm gonna have to look this up.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that they have, and of course that they let their fans do. Very annoying to watch a Mississippi State football game. And I have some colleagues that went to Mississippi State as well, because as a meteorologist, that's actually a big meteorology and TV Met school. So I know a decent amount of people that went there. I've seen plenty of videos and socials, but they've all been from the football games. So not sure about that, but maybe that might play a little bit of a factor here, trying to throw South Carolina off a little bit. And at any time, as we witnessed already, when they went to UCLA, and anyone else for that matter, you get a top 5 team coming in, your fan base is likely going to put their best foot forward as well. And that's going to be something that could be just a little bit tougher. I definitely feel that Mississippi State is going to be more towards the mid-upper half of the SEC. Missouri, I didn't see a lot from them. They have some okay athletes, but I feel like they're probably going to be more of a mid-program. I'm not sure if they're going to be an NCAA tournament team. But Mississippi State is 13-2, and they are on the cusp of being ranked. And, man, wouldn't they love to be with the Gamecocks coming to town. So that is definitely going to be something that South Carolina has to watch out for. You always need to be careful when these teams have the potential and want and need to upset you. And I'm definitely impressed with a couple of their top scorers. These are definitely 2 players from what I've looked at with all the stats of their games. First one is Anaya Russell. And she's a guard. She's a senior from Baltimore. She's been doing a heck of a job, shooting just about 50% from the field. And she's got 13 points a game. Very speedy. Good height. Not crazy tall, of course, as a guard, but, nice 6-foot length. And I believe that she is going to be a good in the mid-range, too. So she's going to be one to watch. And then Jerkayla. She is going to be Jerkayla Jordan, another guard, another senior. She's from Nolens, and she is putting up 15 points a game and almost 7 rebounds. So between Anaya and Jerkayla, those are going to be the 2 players to really watch. Definitely a little bit more of the speed of the shooting. That's where it seems that Mississippi State is going to want to take advantage here. But that can definitely play into what South Carolina is doing. I definitely think that, at least from the way we usually go about things, especially on the defensive side of the ball, trying to keep things a bit more centered in the paint, try to make them drive the ball on you, I think that could definitely play into South Carolina's hands. And with anything that Mississippi State might try to throw at them in terms of crowd noise, cowbells, maybe.
Cowbells, if they had it. It doesn't look like they do at those games, but it would be a nice thing to do, especially indoors.
Dude, that'd be annoying, man.
That would be super annoying.
In an enclosed arena.
I could see why they probably don't allow it, but if I was a school, I'd definitely be allowing them to do that.
I mean, they do for football, but I guess it's a little bit different when you have an open air capacity. So interesting to see as we go down there to Mississippi State. And that definitely is not going to be a cakewalk. And that's something I just want to keep stressing here. Yeah, they beat Mizzou pretty bad, but not all these games are going to be that simple, especially as you start to get into the ranked opponents. And even ones like Mississippi State who are on that cusp, who are still a familiar conference opponent, and they are going to give you their all. So got to make sure you're watching out for these road games. And you're not, of course, looking too far down the road, because that's something that can also happen. We see it across sports many times. You may be underestimating an opponent just because they don't happen to have a number by their team name, and maybe you don't think about their record or as good as they can be, and that's definitely something that we're going to see a lot of this conference this year.
And there's really, now that I'm looking at their roster, their center, Medina Okot, is 6'6", averaging almost 10 rebounds a game. So she could be also somebody to watch out for with that height.
And she's going to be the tallest player on the floor.
Absolutely. And we saw that issue with the UCLA game. Of course, that was like a team physicality advantage.
Yeah.
But still, be interesting to see how they work the ball around some a tower in the middle of the court.
It's just always going to be a factor every time you see a player of that height. When you start to go through this and you end up seeing programs that have centers that are under 6'3", 6'4", that's just going to be a big advantage for South Carolina because we just have that speed and shooting ability to overcome that. And that's always going to be a reminder as we're continuing to go through these games and try to explain, okay, what could be a little bit more of a crack in your armor where, all right, you're going to be exploited for something. And right now, yeah, it is the fact that we do not have a big center. So let's see how that all plays out. It's going to be an interesting one against Mississippi State. I still think South Carolina will be able to handle them for sure, but I'm just hoping they do not underestimate their opponent as they start out the second game of SEC play. And now going through some of these games, Adam, this is where I'm talking about looking down the road. We've already discussed this before, but this is just a gauntlet now coming up, especially now at this point, because as we progressed further into the season, we've been able to see Alabama now starting to come into their own and blossom into a very good team. So you got 5 straight games after what is going to be your home opener, which is awesome. I'm sure the crowd's going to be great for that. Texas A&M coming to town. They're likely going to be 500, I think. They might be 8-6, but they're coming in on Thursday, January 9th. That's a 5 o'clock game on ESPN2. So got the national audience there for our home opener for SEC play. But then after that, I don't want to look past Texas A&M, but they should be able to handle the Aggies. They are having a down year. It happens. You got to be able to get things done when teams are having down years. But after we follow that up, here is your 5-game slate. Coming to town here to Colonial Life Arena, we got Texas, the Longhorns coming in at number 5. Then you go on the road to Alabama down in Tuscaloosa. Then coming back to Columbia, you got the Sooners, number 9. Then you got LSU, number 6. And then also at Tennessee later in the month of January. Like, what a crazy, crazy month this is. And also want to make sure I'm noting here that both Tennessee and LSU are still undefeated on the season. So this is going to be some raucous basketball. This is going to be some incredible high-intensity matchups where it doesn't matter where these games are played, on the road or at home. I really hope to see just a lot of great focus and a lot of great energy in the stands. I don't want to, of course, see that affecting our team, but, just to the point of showing that people care and, making sure you're getting butts in seats, as this is just going to be some really, really good basketball. And I'm hoping that, the fundamentals and everything that of course is centered around the women's game comes out in full force. We're seeing some great shots. We're seeing some great drives to the basket, some good defensive plays, and maybe even players getting in each other's faces a little bit, because you're going to see that as you get more into conference play and you just start to see those teams that you're likely going to see as you get into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and I'm really excited for that gauntlet. Every time we've mentioned it on this podcast, I just keep staring at that 5-game slate and how exciting it is to know that you're going to have a bunch of teams who are fantastic right now, especially Alabama. I don't believe they were ranked when we were doing this preview a few weeks ago, but now climbing up in the top 25. Texas, that's going to be Sunday at 1 p.m. That's going to be a must-watch game. That is exactly what you want out of your sport. You want these top 5 opponents in a window where everyone's going to be watching, and that game, I can't wait for it. I've had that one circled. Very excited to see Texas. Also, I think we mentioned it, friend of ours, mutual friend, big Texas fan. Haven't asked him about his interest in the women's game. Not yet, but if there's any chance I can talk trash to my friends, I'll take it.
Yeah, and this is a big time right now. As we also discussed before, to be a Longhorns fan, they got themselves in the Final Four of the college football playoff. You have your women's program that is in the top 5 right now. I forget what the men's team is right now. I believe they're having a really good season as well. So, great time for that team in Burnt Orange down there in Austin. But that really is going to be a fun one, especially as between last year and this year, Texas has been a pretty perennial program that many expect to be Final Four contenders. I could easily see them there, especially if they just, I would say, step up their game one more notch. They're already here. They're in the right conference. They have the perfect opportunity to be able to showcase if they belong in that Final Four conversation. Because if you can navigate through this conference and if you could somehow end up, whether it's on top or in the top 2 or 3, you can easily say, all right, we are definitely going to be having the potential to be in the mix to be a national champion.
Yeah, and we've seen that a lot, especially with the football program. SEC was touted as the best conference in college football this year. Texas is the only SEC team remaining. So, being the new guy, or new guy on the block, basically, and now you're the last hope for the conference, they're making a real statement with that Final Four appearance. And then, of course, now if you can really take it to the Gamecocks in that game on Sunday, you're not just like, I'm here to say I'm in the SEC. It's like, we're here to compete. We're here to be the best. We're here to try to take that title away from you. Of course, talking to the Gamecocks. And this could be the making, as you said, getting in each other's face. When you compete with these teams, you see them a lot every year, every few weeks, however often they'll play. You start to really dislike them, especially if these games are going to be close, gritty, physical even. I'm really excited to see what kind of rivalry develops with the Longhorns and the Gamecocks.
Yeah, it's going to be very hotly contested, and that's not even just something with them. I could easily see something similar happening with Oklahoma as well, because they are perennial contenders. Or they were when you look back to their Big 12 days. They've always had pretty good women's programs, consistently in the top 25. There's still that little bit of a gap that you can see between some teams that are consistently top 15, top 20, as opposed to top 5. It's just how the women's game has been for a good while. But now, with different things and the transfer portal and NIL, you're just starting to see that gap shrink. So, yeah, none of these games are going to be simple during this time, especially when you are going on the road, especially when we're talking about these conference opponents. So, just looking at that slate, and I'll say it here one more time, 5 straight games against top 20 teams. You got Texas coming here, going to Alabama, Oklahoma coming here, LSU coming here, and then going on the road to Tennessee. And that Tennessee one, definitely not going to be easy. That is such a proud program, and their rich history is really something to appreciate on the women's side of things. So with that is your January. All right, now we go into February, and this is where things start to get a little bit easier overall. There's still going to be some games that could be a little bit more of toss-ups. One of them being the break from SEC play. So let's see about this. We got Auburn coming to town. I easily do see that as a win. And then at Georgia as well. I think they should be able to handle those teams. But then you go on the road to Texas. And this is where I think that they're going to end up tripping up. Just because it's going to be a Sunday game right before Valentine's Day. You're going to have all students back. You're going to have, I'm sure, a very, very busy crowd on hand down in Austin for that one. And it's just so hard to go through this entire schedule, especially coming off, the back of 2 simpler games, and then you got to go on the road to Texas. I think that they could end up tripping up in that one. I hate going through this type of process. As much as I'd love to say, oh yeah, as a prediction that they'll win them all, but I feel like I have to at least drop a loss in there, and that's probably where I would have it. I think at least the crowds that we're going to likely have on hand for some of these bigger games can help push them enough to that win. I think that's going to be very tough with the road game at Texas. So that is on February 9th. Then we go and host Florida. So I think they're going to win that one. And then you got to host UConn with the break from the SEC slate. And that's on February 16th, right after Valentine's Day. And man, does not get any easier. You think maybe they just sprinkle a cupcake opponent in there. Nope. Got to have UConn, one of the best, easily best teams in the country, coming to town right in the middle of your slate.
Yeah, one of the most storied of the last decade, especially.
Yeah.
And that's one of those games that you really, like you said, you'd think you would get a cupcake in there, maybe another Alcorn State or something. It's just, you're going through these body
Alcorn
blows
State.
of NC State.
So that's an interesting one. Pulling out HBCU, Alcorn State.
Yeah, you'd think it would be just at least pump the brakes on the season.
Yeah, of course.
Kind of slow it down, catch your breath, and it's actually probably the most anticipated matchup looking at the schedule, playing one of the, as I just mentioned, one of the most historically prevalent schools, of the last decade. And
Basically.
It's going to be super exciting to see. I mean, they were chasing that record before that loss to UCLA.
You're right.
So you have 2 teams who really don't know how to lose. One of them's going to have to leave there a loser, and that will be an interesting game to watch for.
Yeah, and especially with that here in Columbia again, that is just going to be another incredible one. I would anticipate for that one. I'm not sure, poking through these games. Luckily for some of the bigger women's games, and I love that ESPN has decided to do this with College Game Day. They decided to come to town for a few women's basketball games as well. Yeah, right? Not just the men's. Like, that's great. I love that they do that. That is definitely one I would pencil in as a potential weekend where College Game Day could be in town for that one, which would be awesome on the backs of that game.
Is that the same desk as for college football?
No, it's different.
Oh, okay.
No,
I was going to say, that'd be a little weird to see,
No.
Reese Davis and
No,
Kirk Herbstreit
it's
talking about women's basketball.
No, very different. Completely different panels between the men's and the women's. It's just the fact that they still feature it with the College Game Day branding.
Yeah.
Which is great because it just gives the fans an extra opportunity pregame and, more national exposure for programs, and especially the women's game. So that could be the game. That might not be the one they pick, but maybe it might be later in January, but that's definitely something to watch. And usually they start to filter those through and start announcing those, after we get through the college football playoff. ESPN is still very heavily focused on football right now, which, I get it and understand. That
football's king, as they say.
Yeah, football's king. That's still going to be your big money maker right now. But once we start to get more into the basketball season, you'll start to see more of those promotions coming out for more of the men's basketball College Game Day sites. But if I recall correctly, last year, a few women's games, and then the one that South Carolina had was Georgia. It actually ended up being an okay game because they came out a little flat against Georgia, but I would think they'd try to go, or hopefully go with a ranked matchup at this point, looking down the road. So that'll be something to look forward to.
Yeah, that UConn game is going to be something else, I have a feeling.
Yeah, not SEC, of course, but we wanted to include that with the SEC preview because it's just nicely nestled right in there.
Yeah. As a Gamecock fan, you're a little nervous, like, oh man, we don't even get a break. And then as a casual fan, it's like, oh, can't wait to watch that game.
Yeah,
and so it's great absolutely great for the audience, great for the sport.
Of course.
But of course, as a fan, you're like, I don't want to play them.
Oh yeah,
but it's a little difficult.
But see, that's the thing. You want to appease the people that are going to be paying for these tickets. You're trying to appease the fans that are pumping more money into the university, making sure they're trying to get more money into the Garnet Trust to get these players paid more. Especially because they're selling out a lot of these games, and just so much of the tickets available, it's all resale. It's not easy to get into some of these games. Even just looking on, like if you wanted to go see Texas, I believe the cheapest seat, and this is just general admission, in the upper deck, I believe 35 plus fees. So not terrible, but you're kind of up there because that's just general admission. You don't even have a guaranteed seat. It's just GA. Down below, if I'm not mistaken, the cheapest one I saw for Texas was 80, 90, maybe. And that was just the cheapest. Obviously, things are a little bit more pricey. And that's just going to be how it is. You're not going to be getting cheap seats for some of these top 10 matchups, and that's just fine. What do you see?
I'm looking at the wrong one. Sorry, I was looking at the A&M one.
No
way.
No, see that one's much more affordable. Yeah. That's because it's also at a weird time. It's a 5 p.m. tip, so there's going to be some fans, maybe people who can't get off of work that day because it's right at 5. So you're going to have cheaper tickets for that one.
Yeah, the Texas game, as you mentioned, it's looking like the cheapest tickets are about 70, 75.
Okay.
In my unnamed app that I'm using here. Oh, $30 for, it looks like, the general admission, as you said. And then you get, close to the court, it's about $300, not including your fees. So.
And I'm sure LSU and UConn are only more expensive.
I can only imagine. Let me pull those up, too.
Yeah, I'm curious.
The UConn game looks like it'd be pretty fun to go to, but especially if you mention College Game Day, but yeah.
Yeah, I know.
UConn's looking like 300 floor seating, and then
300.
Oh, excuse me, LSU, not UConn.
LSU, but still.
I'm mixing up my teams.
Dang, no, that's just what I mean. Like, because people who have those season tickets, they do it for those big games, and they don't want to give those up. So unless someone is trying to dump tickets last minute, you are going to be paying a pretty hefty price.
UConn is crazy. Cheapest ticket is $174 for UConn.
One's up top.
Yep. General admission, most expensive is over $1,000 for that UConn USC game. So hot commodity. And I mean, that's as much as it stinks as a fan to want to go see that.
Yeah.
That means a lot of people want to watch your product. So that's great, of course, for the sport and the school.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. You're going to see a lot of people holding onto their tickets. That is exactly the reason why you're having these season ticket holders buying out all these tickets, because they want to make sure that they have their seats secured for these games, because they know, hey, if I just wanted to go on this game as a whim and I try to find a ticket a week or two before, it's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult unless I'm willing to shell out, at least a few $100 for some of these games per ticket. So that is definitely something interesting. I'm not surprised by those prices, especially just with the fandom that has grown for this team.
A little surprised with the one over $1,000 for
That's,
UConn. But
I mean, hey,
it's a great matchup, so I can understand why.
I don't know.
Didn't realize it'd get that high.
I don't know if someone's going to pay that. I mean, if you eventually, I'm sure as the women's game continues to grow and be popular, eventually maybe you're going to start to see more and more celebrities showing up at some of these games and courtside. Some of your people that have millions of dollars to throw around. You never know, but that's definitely something to watch out for.
At the UCLA game, they would have their celebrity cam, like Snoop Dogg and them around.
Oh, well, yeah, of course.
So, of course, once you get, I think, like a game like this, UConn, USC, you'll probably see some.
But see, that's my mean.
Sites.
The fact that they actually are going to travel, where you have, your contingent of celebrities and actors and stuff from more areas like New York or out in LA, where it's not just a drivable distance, but actually traveling to campus sites for these huge games like this one. That'll be something interesting to see, especially for a hot ticket like that one. Following it up, okay, we keep on. Then we got Arkansas that we will be hosting on the 20th of February, going to Vanderbilt on the 23rd. Vanderbilt could be a sneaky team to watch. They're unranked, but they're 14-1 right now. So yeah, definitely watch out for the Commodores. They could be a sleepy good team. And then going on the road to Ole Miss, and I don't think they're as good as people thought they were earlier in the season. They were ranked higher, but now they already have 3 losses. I think that's a bit more winnable. But yeah, definitely watch out for Vandy for that game late in February. And then closing out the slate, got a really good one actually. Got Kentucky coming to town. They're 12-1. They will be coming to town on March 2nd. That'll be the last game before the SEC tournament. That is going to be a preview we, of course, will be having as we get, closer to the spring and the season actually plays out a bit. But that's what I mean. Just all of these teams, there's so many SEC programs that only have 1 or 2 losses right now. It is ridiculous with the amount of power in this conference. It is crazy. And I can go through this right now. Because I just pulled up the standings. So even the teams that aren't ranked and have that, couple loss situation, that would be Mississippi State at 13-2, who we're playing tomorrow, and then Vanderbilt at 14-1. I'm surprised Vanderbilt isn't ranked yet with that 14-1 record, and they've won 7 straight. So I'm sure that they are very much close on the cusp of being ranked. But otherwise, you got Ole Miss at 25 still. You got Kentucky at 16. Oklahoma at 9, Alabama at 19, Tennessee at 15, and then some of the top ones, you got Texas 5, LSU 6, and then South Carolina right now at number 2. And that's how things are settling in. And once the dust actually settles after, of course, this SEC slate, it's going to be very interesting. There's going to be a lot of dominoes that fall because you have to have some teams that are losers, and you have these 1 and 2 loss teams playing each other. As you said before, someone's got to lose. Something has to give. You could easily end up seeing each other and meeting up again in the SEC and NCAA tournament. But in the regular season, not everyone could be undefeated. Not everyone can only have 1 or 2 losses, because you're just getting to that point where you're finally reaching now the upper echelon of talent on the women's side of things, which, as we've said many times, we will keep saying, I'm sure, as these ranked matchups play out, that you're just going to see some of the best basketball on the women's side within this conference slate, and of course that bonus UConn game.
Yeah, I'm really excited for what lays down the road. But as you mentioned, this is a really difficult conference to get through.
Tough. Gritty.
Yeah, so
gauntlet.
Yeah, they really toss you through the grinder with these teams. I mean, if your worst lost team is that, it's still like a 7-win team. It's, at least at the moment, it's really impressive. Mm-hmm. So getting through it unscathed, while doable, would be still very impressive.
It would be. And that's just what we have to keep seeing as these things unfold. As we're still in the humble beginnings of everything, it's nice that they got that win over Mizzou, and I still want to make sure they're not sleeping on Mississippi State. But yeah, you're going to start to see some good players. I'm really excited as we start to go further down into the depths of this season and we can actually break down these games and then review them as they happen. It's really going to be key to see, all right, so how are we faring? Where maybe did we show some weaknesses? How did this player better perform or maybe underperform as opposed to another? Because that's, of course, going to be something that this program has to analyze and Dawn has to take a look at, especially if we do end up not in that undefeated sense like we were last year, because you might need to make a little bit more of some tweaks and some adjustments as you get towards March that you didn't have to worry about as much last year. And that is going to be something, of course, that is fascinating, at least from a fan standpoint and an analyst standpoint to think about. And really just getting into that crazy 5-game slate. That is something I am excited to look into, and just want to throw in one quick tidbit as we start to look towards that. One of the better players I've really seen rising into this season, her name is Madison Booker. From Texas. She is a 6'1" forward as a sophomore, and she's really doing her best to lead that team. She's had some games flirting with 20 points plus, but she's putting in 16 points a game, and she is definitely going to be more of the force to be reckoned with for that team. She hasn't really had any games that I've seen under 10, and she's rebounding 6 plus a game as well. And even, of course, the fact that she's a forward at 6'1", she is still shooting about 50% from three. So she's going to be a fun player to watch when Texas comes to town, along with that whole entire roster. But as we just, of course, go through, I'm not trying to overlook Mississippi State, really going to be looking onto that Texas game. And then, of course, just continuing to go into all these top 20 matchups before we could try to calm it down a little bit. Then we got UConn. We just got a lot of fun coming up here, Adam.
Yeah, it's real exciting. I've mentioned it on this podcast, off this podcast. This slate, like this month of January, it might be the most interesting schedule I've seen for any team I've ever followed. It's just, it's exciting. And of course, it makes you a little nervous to see like what we've seen with Penn State. It's like, yeah, I'm excited to be in the playoff, but okay, now we have to play Notre Dame. So for this, it's like, I'm really excited to get an SEC play. Oh, but now we have to, go play Texas. Now we have to play UConn. All this stuff.
It's just one of the best times of the year, or just in general, if you are a sports fan and you're a big lover of football and basketball, because just everywhere you look, you can have something to watch, something exciting to tune into, whether it is, now the college football playoff that goes a little bit later, the NFL playoffs coming up, and then, of course, just your huge slate of women's and obviously men's basketball as well. And I just love the college game. It is just something I've really grown to be a huge fan of, just seeing the passion of fan bases, whether it is bigger schools, whether it's smaller schools, and people even just making those travels once you get to those NCAA tournament games. It's just some of the best energy that I have been able to see with more of, your non-huge cities or big metropolitan areas, you're more of your college cities like Columbia. I think they really greatly embody that here in South Carolina. And you saw that with the championship parade they had. I was lucky enough to be able to stop by that, and it was such a great scene. You have tens of thousands of people out there lining the streets for your women's basketball team for winning a national championship, shutting the area downtown there here in Columbia for a good deal of the day. And it was great, and that's the kind of camaraderie you get if you do find that championship, or just even your regular season or postseason games. And when you have the opportunity to capture that energy in more of these small bits against these other ranked teams and against these other very passionate SEC fan bases, it's going to be great. It's going to make for great basketball. It's going to make for maybe some more budding rivalries. Like you said, maybe we'll see that more with Texas. But just a great overall fan experience, especially with those great concessions at Colonial Life Arena that we love.
I've never been to a stadium that sold beatboxes. I was very impressed.
Yeah, they got the good drink. They got the good food. And that's another reason I hope to try to get some plans together. And we didn't go through the process this year of getting media passes, because they don't allow them for just podcasters or people that do only social media. I'm hoping that they maybe change that policy as far as what Colonial Life does for media over the next couple of seasons or maybe even next season. And obviously didn't get to the point of getting to do season tickets yet, but definitely going to keep my eyes on some of these resale ones that hopefully getting closer to some of these matchups are a bit more affordable, because not always going to be, as much as I love this team, can't be putting out a few $100 for a ticket. So just to be able to get in there, definitely going to be keeping an eye on some of those, especially for some of the weekend games on Sundays, because there's so many good games coming up.
Yeah, I really love, you mentioned earlier, like the college energy. I've gotten, as I've grown up, when I was little, I would watch, the professionals, basketball, football, baseball, that. And then when I got to about college age was when I really started to appreciate the college game. And then now, as an adult, it's just, I have grown to love college more than the professional side of some of these sports, especially basketball. I would love to watch college basketball over the NBA. And it is so much due to both the fans, of course, the energy that they bring, and then into like the side of football, you have, of course, like the bands that bring a different feeling to these games, and it just makes you feel like every play, every down, every game is so much bigger just because of the energy that these fans bring and the team brings. So seeing that we have these big schools on our schedule coming up, I mean, Texas, a huge fan base. LSU, at least in college football, I'm not too certain of what the crowd is like.
They've grown a lot in basketball.
Yeah,
they've grown. Trust me, they have grown. They get butts in those seats for the women's games, very much so too.
Yeah, I'm very excited because, like I said,
Yeah.
LSU in Death Valley, one of the best experiences, like to just visually even.
Oh yeah, you gotta give them their
for
due.
student energy.
Definitely.
So I can't wait to see, outside of just watching the game, just what kind of energy we're gonna have on the road and, of course, here in Colonial Life.
Yeah, and can't say it enough. That's why ESPN is wanting to have a lot of these games on ESPN or ABC. You're giving them that national audience, and it is very much well respected, all for the right reasons. So, get those butts in those seats. Make sure if you're a season ticket holder, you are at those games if you're not putting your seat up for sale, because, you want to be able to provide that energy. And I'm telling you, providing that fan energy, it does. It can make that difference. It is a part of the game. It maybe isn't appreciated enough all the time, but between especially basketball and college football, it makes a huge, huge difference. You gotta have that home crowd advantage, because if you don't, there's not as much of a point for these home games, because what are you getting out of that? You can easily be the tipping point in a game sometimes, especially when they're going to be close, like a lot of these games are. So just, of course, a quick reminder: if you have tickets, if you're a season ticket holder and you're not selling them, please do all you can to get out there. Don't waste that season ticket.
We saw it with Penn State football, that first game, SMU, that crowd influenced that entire first half.
Oh, it was so fun being up there.
Yeah, you got to the liberty of being at
so
that game.
Good.
And it was crazy to watch on TV because this guy, I believe his name's Kevin Jennings, the quarterback of SMU.
Yeah. I was shook.
You could see him on TV holding his hands over his ears. He couldn't hear anything. So if you ever think that these players don't get influenced by the crowd, they 100% do. So if you, as you just mentioned, if you have the opportunity, if you have the tickets, make sure to go, because everyone needs to contribute to the energy to take down some of these opponents.
Yeah, and you don't have laryngitis, of course. I'm telling you, get out there and keep supporting these women. They're an incredible team to watch. This is an incredible and growing sport that, it's just great to get that volume raised up, and it's not as hard to do inside of an arena as it is a football stadium. So always remember that. And it's going to be so much fun. So excited. Mr. Adam, anything you want to add right now?
Go Cox.
Yes, let's go Cox. All right, Adam, you know it. Y'all know it as well. Thank you again for taking a check of the Ladies First podcast. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe. Like and subscribe to us here on YouTube. Eventually, want to make sure we're getting to other platforms, but if you're not subscribing here, it's going to make it harder for us to grow on other platforms. And for any joint fans of this one that also love NASCAR in any way or just enjoy hearing our smooth, buttery voices, we also have a NASCAR NASCAR podcast that we will have a continuation coming up on called the Palmetto Pit Stop.
1 month away.
1 month away.
1 month away from the Clash at Bowman Gray. Of course, Tony and I will be attending. Very excited. First time up near Winston-Salem.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
That'll be a fun little exploration.
I think so.
And hopefully to some more races, maybe even if they're not in the Cup Series, because we have some big ones coming to the Carolinas, bringing back Rockingham. Any old NASCAR fans
Old
from
Rocky.
back in the day, old Rocky, the Rocker, as it was called back in the day, the
Yes.
Rock, hasn't been raced there in the Cup Series since 2004, bringing it back for the Truck Series. So who knows if we can get to any more, but definitely we're going to have some stuff planned for the Clash at Bowman Gray. And, of course, the whole season, if you wouldn't mind riding with us, as well as the whole season here at Ladies First.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, who wouldn't think that, women's basketball and NASCAR could go hand in hand? Well, it is on this platform at least. Odd combination, probably the only one out there like it. But thank you again, everyone. And, of course, our page is overarching the Northern South podcasts, paying homage to our northern roots and our southern living. Thank you again for listening to Ladies First. We'll see you next time.